Good evening, Fredonia. You're listening to the local lowdown on WCVF 88.9 The Voice and WDVL 89.5 The Inferno. I'm your co-host and promotions lead, Aaron.
Hello, I'm Jordan, and I'm your other co-host. I'm your A&R lead and executive producer as well.
Hey, what's up? I'm Sebastian, making sure all the production is productioning, and it is, and we're all set to get this party started.
Tonight's show is brought to you by Fredonia Radio Systems, in a group effort to promote and showcase the local music scene here in Fredonia, but also Western New York at large. Welcome to the Local Lowdown.
Our guest for this week is Justin von Strasburg. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, I'm Justin.
We like to start off every episode by letting our guests sort of introduce themselves and their relationship with music.
Oh, I'm Justin von Strasburg, as I said. I'll probably repeat my name a lot. I'm 45, and I've been playing music, not electronic music like you'll hear on this show, but music in general since I was probably 10, so like 35 years, give or take. Because I was in a concert band in middle school, so like 6th grade, so that's like 10, right? 10 years old? I don't know, something like that. You get the idea. It's been a while. At least 25 years, at least, but probably more. Been playing in bands for probably just as long. Started off with rock bands, metal bands, stuff like that. The first band I was ever in, it's going to sound crazy, was a Christian rock band called COG, C-O-G, Children of God. I'm not joking.
Wow.
First show I ever played, I was on. So if any of you have ever been to a church, the stage that they they do the sermons and things on, I always forget what it's called, but the room in general is called a sanctuary, or at least for the denomination I was a part of. And so the first show I ever played on was basically a church stage. And first song we had going, they actually put strobes on us. So strobe lights. Playing my first show as a drummer, strobe lights, my arms were doing this. Because the flashing lights,
Yeah.
was like, I'm trying to play the song, and it feels like my arms are going in slow motion. It was really weird. First show, yeah, so.
How long did that last? That project?
Year and a half, 2 years, I think I was in that band. Yeah, it was interesting because we played shows, we played all different kinds of places. So it was my first realization that you're not just going to play like a bar, like you can actually play other places. So that was fun. Played churches, of course, played outside, played like VFW type halls, things like that. But I think we only ended up playing like 7 shows in that entire like 2-year span, which is how some bands go. They just want to practice because you always there's always like a perfectionist in a band, and the guitar player and backing vocalist of the band who put it together, he was kind of one of those people, so he wanted everything to be perfect. I wish I could remember how long we practiced before that first show, but I would imagine it was quite a bit of time. Went through some lineup changes with that one. The first bass, so everybody in that band was part of the church. So it was guitar player, guitar player, vocalist, bass player, and me. And then at some point, the bass player left, and we hired this guy who had to be in his early 30s. And we were all teenagers or like early 20s, so it was like really weird to have this older guy in the band. But I don't know, he was a nice dude, but either way. Then I did other bands and other bands and other bands and other bands. And now I play in a band called Neon Fantastic when I'm not making electronic music or weird sounds with the snare drum. I could have did that too. That would have been fun. But yeah, you can find all my stuff. Just go to justinvonstrasburg.com and there's access points to everything. But yeah, I've been making music in a solo capacity since probably 98, 99. First solo stuff I ever did was like trip hop and drum and bass kind of stuff. So
Cool.
Direct influence to what I'm playing. I perform for you guys today.
Yeah.
But because I was big into like Tricky and Portishead and
Nice.
Ronnie Size and Represent, if anybody knows who they are. Photech, but all that kind of stuff. But people know Tricky and Portishead. Most
Yeah.
people do.
Yeah.
So, or DJ Shadow, if you know them or know
Yeah.
him. Introducing was a big
I
influence.
love that album.
Like if you go to my Bandcamp, check out my album Corner Music, DJ Shadow is a massive influence on that album. DJ Shadow, Tricky, Portishead, and the drum and bass people specifically.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that whole point was trying to make. I wanted to make an album that was all samples, but that's really hard when you don't have a computer. It's like in '99, I didn't have a computer, so I did everything. I would record stuff off a keyboard or a drum machine or grab samples. And when I mean grabbing a sample, I'm putting like a speaker near a keyboard to record something, and hopefully it's coming through. And trying to work with that, and then playing live instrumentation, guitar, bass, or whatever, keyboards on top of it. And recording that onto a cassette deck, yes, a cassette deck, and then having that play back and record a new stuff while that's playing back onto another cassette deck, and then repeating the process. It was fun, but it was difficult because I kind of couldn't go in and edit like I do now with the computer. Like it was basically just live takes of everything. Like when I would have vocalists come in to add vocal tracks, they would be surprised that there was no way for them to do another recording or another take of their stuff without me having to play with them to add my additional parts, because I would, again, trying to save how many times I recorded on cassette, because, again, for a lot of people who might not know, when you're recording a set and record to another cassette, you lose audio quality, like generational loss. So I had to try to record as much as I can at one time so I didn't lose that much loss. Like, I think the most tracks any of my songs at that time had were like 10 tracks, because if I went any further, it would just not be all that great. But now I look back at that as like a very lo-fi kind of thing. So again, it kind of really plays to the DJ Shadow, because his first album, Introducing, was very lo-fi in a lot of spots. So I guess it turned out to be a good thing. But at the time, I was like, I want better quality everything. Now I just like, hey, the lo-fi, the better.
Yeah, that's really interesting because your music now, at least on Glitch, is so like everything is so crisp and clean. So how do you feel like that sort of lo-fi stuff plays into now making sort of the opposite in a way, at least in just that one aspect?
Well, actually, it's not that different because the sounds. So, a little background on Glitch. All of my glitchy electronic music, which is actually the genre Glitch, the first generation of it which was, so there was a group called Oval, Marcus Pop. He did this project called Oval in the late 90s where he took CDs, he scratched them up and played back the resultant stuff and then put it into a computer and made songs with it. That was the late 90s, so that's the first generation of Glitch. Most people know Glitch now is more of a chopped up, I'm trying to think of his name, the very famous electronic musician who was in From First to Last. I'm blanking on his name at the moment. Either way, like it's very like hard electronic music with like very severe chops and stuff in it. But either way, my stuff came from that, and what I wanted to do when I created my music is I wanted to have a humanity to it. So I wanted to use live playing, but I still wanted to have that glitchy found sound. So all the sounds that are on all of my electronic albums that, again, is not corner music, is actually from sound sources that were recorded in the early 2000s. Like, from that same time period when I was doing my trip hop and stuff. So all of it's from like 2000 to 2002, all the sounds, like the guitar sounds, the field recordings, everything is from back then except for some exceptions, which are listed in the notes of Glitch. So in essence, it is a lo-fi album, but because of some of the sources I used, it does sound cleaner and crisper because everything's cut up, but everything is extremely lo-fi. Like if you listen to it, so all the melody sounds are actually from a guitar through what's called the Space Station, which is a very sought-after pedal, which I wish I never would have sold. but I recorded them out of an amp and then into a recorder that was across the room. So there is room sound in all of that stuff. So everything in there that's why it's got this weird warmth to it, because it's all live recorded or field recording or whatever it is. But yeah, lo-fi's still there, but in a different way.
So how did you go about saving all of those sounds? Were those sounds from like songs from before, or did you just have those like field recordings and stuff saved sort of?
Yeah, so what I would do back then when I was writing like the corner music stuff is I would come up with riffs and try to figure out if this could become a song. But then after that, I went through this period where I was playing with effects pedals a lot and trying to figure out how to do looping and stuff like that, and it never really panned out the way I wanted. But I would record some of these experiments with the intent of maybe doing something with them, and then when my friend showed me Fruity Loops, or which is now called FL Studio, there was a tool in there called Beat Slicer, and I loaded one of my samples into it, one of those recordings into it one day, and it chopped it up into small little fragments, and that was kind of like the linchpin of me going with it. So basically, every computer I've ever used since the early 2000s, those sounds have been on it and have traveled with it. I actually stopped making that kind of music for it was like a decade, because FL Studio didn't work on a Mac when I first got my Mac in 2004. So until, what was it, 2018, I think is when I did 2. So yeah, it was like 14 years. I didn't do any of that kind of music because I didn't know it, because I didn't realize FL Studio, or what was Fruity Loops, was on a Mac. And so when I found out that it was, I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I can make some new stuff, because my album 2, I made it in 2018 because I was bored one day. So I went back through my archive of tracks that I had made back then. So my very first, I'm going around in circles, my very first electronic glitch album, I'm Fragile Again, was actually created in 2002 to 2004, give or take.
Okay.
Actually, I remember finishing one of the tracks when I was going to Villa Maria College. I was in one of my design classes, and I had my laptop with me, and I finished one of the tracks. It was called like Thursday Afternoon at the time. That's where the name comes from. But I did a lot of tracks that didn't go on that album that I thought maybe would go on to something. And I just, again, stopped using it because I bought a Mac not long after I finished that album. And didn't do anything with the album, which I don't know why I never did anything with it, because I probably could have sent it to like one of my favorite labels at the time, 12K, and Taylor might have put it out. I have no idea, and I might be famous in that genre of music, but I never did anything with it. Stupid me, but it's what happens. But I had all this stuff, and in 2018, I think it was, I went back to see if there was anything that was worth working with, and I ended up building 5 albums from the leftover tracks that I had that I didn't realize were even there. So I ended up building 2, 22, Sky and Tree, and other ones that you can find on my Bandcamp from that. And then I realized FL Studio worked on Mac, and I started creating new stuff. So from my Grass and Sidewalk album on, it's all brand new stuff, still using those sound sources from back then. So I've created like 8 albums from that same batch of sounds. How I keep doing it, I have no idea, but it just keeps happening.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never would have thought that all those different albums with somewhat varying styles, too, all came from those same original sounds. It's really cool to hear that you keep going back to that and drawing from that stuff from the early 2000s.
I like limitations. I think it makes better music when you limit yourself to a certain palette of things, especially with electronic music, because it can go insane.
Yeah.
Because you basically have the entire world of sounds
Right.
at your hands,
Right.
depending on what you're doing. So you have to limit yourself somehow,
Yeah.
at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, for the people that may not be as familiar with 12K, Mill Plateau, Raster, and some of these labels and this first wave of glitch music that you got really into, is there like a starter pack you would give people, or is like there's some stuff that you're just still influenced by today that you listen to a lot?
I think the easiest thing to do would be just to go to 12k.bandcamp.com and scroll all the way down to like the first and check out not the first couple albums, because when Taylor started the label, he was still doing, I guess, what would be considered techno, but it was like techno of the late 90s. So if anybody's ever was around in the 90s who's listening to this or watching this and remembers a show called AMP, 12, the guy who created 12K or started 12K, Taylor, he did a lot of music that sounded like stuff you would have heard on that show AMP on MTV.
Okay.
He was in a band called Prototype 909, did other projects. So the first couple ones are very much minimal techno. So you might still like them, but they don't sound like what my stuff sounds like. They sound like late 90s techno. But again, still very experimental in that within the realms of that world.
Okay.
It's not until you get to like Shuttle 358's Frame where you get the first glimpse of what inspired me. So the first thing that really inspired me to do what I do is Do While off of 94 Distant by that group Oval, who was started by Mark Pappas. That's actually the thing that really inspired me to go weird like this.
Okay.
So it was that, and then other things that I started hearing. But I guess the 5 albums I would suggest that were hugely influential for me would be 94 Disconaut from Oval.
Okay.
Stream from Dan Abrams, which is Shuttle 358 under his regular name. I'm not sure how you even pronounce it, but it's LJUD. So I just say lunge or ludge or something like that. From Andreas Tillinger. Mokira Plea, which is also Andreas, but under a different monkier because everybody had thousands of names at the time. And then probably this is not a glitch album, but it heavily influenced the way I edit things. And it's Despite Ourselves from a group called 12K, who at the time were doing everything. All their music was created from field recordings and digital sounds. So the way they edit stuff, the way their flow, if you listen to my album all the way through, it actually loops back on itself. And the chops and the way, like for example, Saunter into Sunverse. Yeah. That just abrupt change is a 12K, is a TV POW thing. Okay. The way I, like in, what is it, at the end of Echo, how it fades out, and then there's just silence, and all of a sudden it sounds like something turns on with Kierlin. That's a TV POW kind of thing, where they're just changing direction, but doing it by just the way they edit something. Mm-hmm. So the way they edit influences the way I edit everything, whether it's my snare drum albums or my electronic albums or anything else that I do. I always have to find a flow. I look at my albums as one complete thing, and just it has to go. It's like when I listen to an album and it doesn't, to me it sounds like they didn't sequence it the proper way. Yeah. It bothers me. Like, come on. Like, just sequence an album. It's not hard. Like, listen to it and see how each track actually flows together. Like, I know there's reasons because, maybe the album has a whole story arc to it, and they fill this song and the songs that are in the order the way they should be. But if you're going to do that, you could still put the songs together. They could still flow together. They don't have to be connected, actually physically connected, but they should feel like they make sense one after the other. And that's what I try to do, at least. Sometimes I build my albums that way. Like, I look at the way I ended one song, and I'm like, maybe I'll start the next song as a good logical endpoint to that. And I know for most people that's probably not a good way to start a song because they want to have maybe an emotional thing, or, if they're writing songs with lyrics, a lyrical thing that'll trigger it, or a guitar riff or whatever. But, yeah, it's all about just what flows for me. And that's, yeah. But, yeah, that handful of albums is probably the more influential ones. Yeah. If you can find them,
It seems like throughout your career you've been inspired by nature in different forms, using titles for songs, like about the leaves changing colors and trees. How do you feel like this connects with your art and inspires you?
Oh, excuse me. Had to drive a long way to get here today. Um,
In the nature that was happening today.
Exactly. Yes.
Snowing
No,
on the first day of November when we're recording this.
I like sounds in general, and so I had this epiphany one time where I was so I'm a drummer. So with drummers, there's always got to be rhythm. There's always got to be things happening, and so when you're writing a song, get a drink here real quick. Sorry. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
When you're writing a song, you always feel like there has to be some kind of rhythm. So when I started improvising, which is a thing I do in other genres, like my snare drum stuff, it's all improvised. Or when I play with my friend Tristan and stuff, it's improvised. I always thought that you had to, play what the other person was playing or play with the other person. But the best way to improv is to not listen to them, but listen to them at the same time, if that makes any sense. So just separate yourself from them, but still every once in a while pay attention to what they're doing, because then you can kind of come back. And once I realized that, somehow it clicked in my brain that I just like sound. I don't know, it's weird. I know that's a weird statement, but it kind of realized that, I just like sound. And then one day I was like, oh, that's a cool sound. Like scratching something. How our producer didn't want us to scratch anything, but, I like...
I'll let it slide.
Thanks. Oh, you're so nice. But I realized I just like sound, so one day I just started recording things, field recording, and at about the same time I was, getting into the experimental music, and I was finding all this very out there. Like, there's entire record labels that just focus on field recordings and field recordists. And so I started finding this kind of stuff, and people who would collage it together, like TV Pow, for example, or some of the others that are out there that I'm blanking on their names at the moment. But I just realized I liked all this stuff, and it wasn't the fact that there was a rhythm there or there was a melody there. It was just a sound. And so when I started creating albums, I realized that any of this stuff can be used. Why does it have to be something with a melody or something with a rhythm? Like, so just throw this stuff in here.
Right.
And so I started integrating it into my music. That's why if you listen to, like, the corner music stuff, there's no field recordings in it. It's before this epiphany. And then when you listen to, like, I'm Fragile Again, you'll hear that stuff kind of sort of there, but it's not quite there yet. There's references to it. But then it slowly came into my stuff more and more and more. Now, like my snare drum albums, I record albums with windows open. I record, like, outside.
Yeah.
So, like, it's my drum just, like, turning it back and forth on grass, stuff like that. Or that's why I have to say on my albums, this is not a field recording. This is literally me in that environment playing, because I just liked all that stuff. And I think I kind of liked it too because a lot of the experimental people I was listening to, they started doing the same thing. Because a lot of them come from, like, this jazz background where you record in a studio and get a nice pristine sound, so you don't hear the environment, you hear just the sounds. Kind of like in this studio that we're in right now. Like, you just want to hear the voices, you don't want to hear the room. Well, people started saying, we want to hear the room too. So there's a trombonist, Radu Malfatti, and he plays the trombone very, 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 very minimally. So over 40 minutes, he might make like 3 sounds. The rest of the sounds are not him. They're like the environment he's in. Like, he did a recording that's called One Man and a Fly. And you can hear the fly on the recording because it's so quiet in this room. You can hear the fly buzzing around the microphone.
That's wild.
So it was stuff that I really got inspired by. I want to throw that into my mix. So, for example, Carolyn, Aura, and Sunverse, some people would not call those songs. They are songs to me. Like, they're field recordings, like chopped up field recordings, but they are, to me, songs. They are full-fledged songs on my album. They're not just interludes or outros.
Yeah.
they're full-fledged pieces.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about Aura specifically. Where was that taken?
Allentown Art Festival from 2022.
Gotcha. Yeah, it kind of, when I heard it, I thought it was like a restaurant ambiance. Like
Mhm.
it just, that's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think it was recorded because I live on the corner of Allen and Elmwood in Buffalo, and it's on Allen near Cafe 59. I think is where I recorded that. I could be wrong, but I think it was around that area.
Gotcha. Yeah.
All right, cool.
On your website, when describing glitch, you had this statement next to it. Light and sound glitch our perception of the world on a daily basis. Because of this, our memories, our nostalgia can creep back in. Would you say that's a overarching theme of the record? I think it was when you were describing like the album cover and maybe how it was made.
Yeah. Usually my albums don't have themes. I just make sounds that I like and put them out there. But that one, it was a weird one because I was trying to figure out a name for it, and I couldn't figure it out. And kept going, and I was like, "What am I gonna call this thing?" And the names of all the tracks were coming together, and I realized, oh, like this sounds like this, and like I had like Carolyn and Aura are the same thing, but one's a light one and one's a sound. It's like using sound to show the shape of something, or using the light to show the shape of something. That's Aura's the light one, and Kieran's the sound one, or Carolyn's the sound one. So those two tracks kind of brought up that idea of concept of like nostalgia, and then Sunverse kind of put the icing on the cake. Because if you listen to that, there's like little boys a couple houses over from where my mom lives playing in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can hear them like, girls not involved, or like girls not invited. I'm like, it's just like kids having fun being stupid,
Yeah, it's crazy how even just like any sound like that you can hear, and I immediately knew what that was. Like I knew it was kids playing outside.
And then my mom,
probably the house over,
and then my mom's asking what I want for dinner on the end of the track, and then you hear my mom's dog Scotty there at the very end. So there's like that's kind of it. Just because of all that stuff, that's kind of where the idea. I kind of realized, oh, this thing does have a theme, because yeah, and like the album cover kind of is that same idea. It's like a foggy memory, like with the green kind of
blurriness.
Yeah, exactly. It's like trying to remember something, but you're not quite sure. Like if you look at that image, I'm not sure when I took that image, but I know I took it when I was at Villa Maria College between 2002 and 2004. So it actually comes from the same time period as the sound sources come from, unintentionally, but this kind of happened. But I think it was taken during the fall because it's hay, but I'm not sure at the same time. It could be like late summer. Like I'm not really sure, but for a lot of people, fall is like this weird nostalgia kind of period for them because of like Halloween and and like
school starting,
like school, like all
leaves
exactly
changing colors.
Yeah, Thanksgiving kind of stuff. So but so it all just kind of popped in, and I'm like, this album kind of unintentionally had a theme built to it just as I was creating everything. But it was not intentional from the beginning. It just kind of happened. Because I like to have, because again, the album loops on itself, so I like the idea of balance. So if you notice the album's 9 tracks, there's the songs kind of mirror each other in a weird sort of way. So there's like Drift and Saunter, Carolyn and Aura, like all these things kind of like, playing off of each other, like, different versions, like sauntering through a space or drifting through a space, like kind of, I like stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
definitely. Well, I think it's about time that the audience gets to hear some of these songs.
Ooh.
Going to transition into that. Take it away, Justin.
I'm Justin Strasburg, Justin von Strasburg. Von's my middle name. And this song's called Drift. You can find it on my album Glitch. I hope you like it. Thank you. That was Drift. This one's called Masuka. Again, I am Justin Strasburg. Thank you. That was Masuka. Excuse me. Up next is my my slow jam. It's called Echo. So, find a partner. Just bliss out, or just if you're on a couch, just stay on the couch. Maybe lay down on the couch if you're not already laying down on the couch. Or, do what you want. That was a live version of Echo from my album Glitch. That one is a tricky one to play live, so I kind of do an interpretation of it. Same thing with this one called Refraction, because on my album I do a lot of fine edits, so I kind of I can explain it more, but yeah, a lot goes into some of these tracks, so playing them live can be tricky. But all right, this one's called Refraction. It's also on my album Glitch. Everything I'm playing today is from my album Glitch, which you can find at justinvonstrasburg.bandcamp.com. justinvonstrasburg.bandcamp.com. Refraction. Refraction. That one actually cuts like straight on the album, so it sounds a lot cooler on the album because it's like going crazy and it just cuts. That's kind of hard to do. So sorry, very sorry, very sorry. If that was your favorite, if you've heard of me before and you've heard that track and that's your favorite one, hopefully that was a good version. If not, I'm very, very sorry. And if you want, you can come find me and beat me up if you want. But that's that's your prerogative. Your prerogative. All right. Last one I'm gonna play is Saunter. This, I guess, is my air quote hit. This is the song that everybody seems to like, and it was the last song I wrote for my album, and it was not intended to go this way, but this is the way it went, and now I probably should write more stuff like it. Maybe I'll get famous. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see if you guys like it. All right. Saunter. Thank you very much. That was Saunter from my.
Well, thank you so much, Justin, for coming down and doing that set for us.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm really glad you did the big hit Saunter because I'm a big fan of that one. It's always going in my head. I find it quite addicting.
Yeah.
Yeah, once I heard the album for the first time when it came out in May, I think I added that song to our local music hour pretty much right away because I was like, people need to hear this one. So.
Have you had anybody call in and be like, or send you a message like, who is that person, and can you play the song just a bunch of times? And
I'll have to ask our music director, but not that I've heard of.
I got to get my monthly listeners up on Spotify. You know,
Yeah,
I'm like
get
6
the
right
word
now.
out there.
I think.
So we talked about this a bit in the first part of the interview, but outside of playing drums in Neon Fantastic and making your electronic music, you also do solo snare drum performances. So what inspired you to perform that way?
So that comes back from the improv stuff. So when I got into the more so quick history. First music I ever listened to was music in the 80s because I'm 45, so just listening to whatever is on the radio and like in the 80s and stuff. So my 5 favorite songs are all from the 80s, but if anybody wants to know what those are, you can always send me a message, but I can also say them, but we'll get to that later on. So I listened to stuff on the radio. I got into hair metal, so like, Def Leppard and Motley Crue and Poison, Danger Danger, Trickster, all that stuff. And then because of that, I was watching 120 Minutes on MTV, again, an old show on MTV, which I miss, and got into more extreme stuff. And because of that, that led to me eventually starting to listen to industrial music. And so I got into Skinny Puppy, if anybody knows who Skinny Puppy is. And I found out that Kevin Key, who is one of the main songwriters in Skinny Puppy, also did other projects. So he did like Download and Plateau and all these different things. And one of the people he worked with was Mark Spivey. And Mark Spivey had worked with other people. And eventually that led me to Brent Gutseat, who is a member of that group TV Pow that I mentioned. And I found out that TV Pow were a group from Chicago that had moved to Japan and were living in Japan playing shows. And they got connected with this music scene, which got the name Onkyo, but nobody in the scene wanted to call themselves that. But basically, they were all improvised players that played very quietly and very minimally. So take free-form jazz and just play one note and then wait, then play another note and then wait. And again, they were all kind of like me. They were all people who were formerly metalheads or jazz musicians or whatever, and they just wanted to play their instruments differently, figure out what else could be done with the instrument. So you
Yeah.
had guitar players and drummers and a lot of horn players because you could do a lot of crazy stuff with the horn. So you had a lot of people doing that. And you had people starting to play with electronics in different ways. So one of them was Toshimura Nakamura, and he plays with an output mixing board, which is you run the outputs into the inputs, and you're playing with feedback. So we did that, and because of them, I came across this label called Erstwhile, which is based in New York, kind of like 12K is, run by John Abbey. John Abbey, I guess, used to work for a very popular newspaper, but I always forget which one it is, and he actually ended up getting a settlement. Something happened, he got a settlement, so he's able to... I don't think he works now except for running his label, which is really weird because I don't think his label makes all that much money, to be honest. But he makes, I guess, enough to do it along with the settlement. I don't know. But he started this idea of taking one musician who had never played with another musician and get them to play together and jam. So he did all these duos over time. So along with finding out who TV Pal played with and then finding out about Erstwhile, I discovered all these improvised players from all around the world.
Gotcha.
So Europe and Japan and America and Korea and China and all these people. And at the same time, I started a project with my friend Chris Labus, who was in one of the hardcore bands I was in, and called Japanese Mileage. I forget where the name comes from. I think it's a lyric in a song by a band called Dredge. I think that's where it comes from.
Okay.
But we tried to do improvising stuff, and he was playing with tapes, and I was trying to play with sounds triggered from a laptop. And it just never quite felt right. And then eventually I had started going to shows in Buffalo, and I came across the Sound Lab, the very first incarnation of it. So there used to be a music festival in Buffalo called Murder the Word. It happened for a couple of years, and I think they stopped it. But Craig Reynolds used to run it, and he started Sound Lab in the basement. So if you go into downtown Buffalo, and if you know where Shays 716 is, the back building half that's on Franklin, that's right behind that, that's where Murder the Word was in that building.
Okay.
And the very first Sound Lab location was on the first floor of that building. And I started going to shows there and getting into all this weird stuff. And then eventually it moved onto Pearl Street where Sato Brew Pub was. So it was in that location where I don't know what's in there now, but Sato Brew Pub was in there for a while. And I met these guys, Tatsuya, who we just called him T for short because it was hard for us to say his name at first. But I've gotten very good at saying Japanese names and Korean names and things over the years. So T and I and this other guy, Michael, we decided to create a project called Amulets Parking, where T played with tapes. Like, he had microcassette recorders. He would record stuff and, like, play them and slow the tapes down and speed them up and stop, start kind of stuff. And Michael played with the synth. And at first I was doing the sample stuff, but eventually I was just kind of playing with, like, a contact microphone and, like, working the mixing board that was controlling their signals. Because when I improvise, I actually like to play less than everybody else is. I like the other players to play and me just kind of just lay back and do nothing, for lack of a better term. But as I did that, it worked, but it never felt right. And then one day, a couple years after that, this was 2011, I realized, why am I trying to figure out all this other stuff when I'm a drummer? There are people who do improvised drum, weird drum stuff, like Shah Meehan is a guy that plays with just snare drum and cymbal. But he doesn't do it in the way you think he does it. So he has a snare drum set up on a stand, and he'll put the cymbal on it upside down and take a little piece of metal and kind of go up and place it on the cymbal, goes like this, so it starts vibrating everything. And thought that was fascinating. And then there was all these weird people doing stuff with different things. There's a guy who was playing with the typewriter for a while. One of my favorite albums of all time is Takahiro Kawaguchi's N. It's all kitchen timers. So it's like, it's awesome. It's just all these just piles of kitchen timers.
Wow.
And so I wanted to find something that was like that, but was mine.
Yeah.
Because all these players found their instrument. Whether it was a guitar but playing it in a different way or a horn and playing it a different way. You'd be surprised how many people can improvise with a trumpet, and where the three of them, like if you took three of them, they would all do it differently.
Right.
And so I wanted to do that same thing. So I kind of started figuring out, like, okay, well, why? Again, I'm a drummer, so why don't I just use a snare drum? And I had a contact mic. Forget why I had it. Probably from like Japanese mileage or something. And I had the computer speakers that were attached to the computer that I wrote some of the early electronic experiments and stuff that I did that became maybe some of the glitch stuff, some of the other things, because I had this other project way back when. But I took the computer speakers, connected them to a mixer and the contact mic, and I put the contact mic under the snare, so between the snare wires and the bottom resonant head, and turned on the computer speakers and started making sounds with it. And the contact mic I had was super sensitive, so even if I turned the speakers this way, it started feedbacking. So I started getting basically the snare drum became a resonant chamber. And so I played amplified snare drum for like 3 years until I moved down to Austin, Texas, and I played some shows down there, some noise shows, and I got connected with the noise scene up here. And then when I was down there, there was a kid that I met. I'm blanking on his name at the moment. But we played a show at his house, and I don't know if this is going to be offensive or not, but he had a like a plastic, and he had turned it on. He would put it inside of like a copper dish, and it was just floating away inside the copper dish. And I was like,
Okay.
I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I asked him where he got them, and I got a couple of them, along with some wind-up toys and other things. And I kind of shifted away from the amplified stuff to playing acoustically with just like wind-up toys and a weasel ball, which is like a cat-dog toy that they chase around. And, and I was like, wow, this stuff is cool. Like, it was just like these ticking sounds and like kind of stuff. And I just was fascinated with it and just had so much fun. And I started playing shows with that, along with the amplification. So sometimes acoustic, sometimes amplificated.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, this was down in Austin, I got the weasel ball, and I was trying to figure out how to make it work on the drums. So, like, the wind-up toys would work great because they would just move around on the drum head and not maybe occasionally fall off, but there would be no problems with it.
Yeah.
The ball, the moment you turn it on, the thing would just fly off the top of the drum and go rolling in my room. So I had to figure it out. So I thought maybe I could tape it and some string, and I was like, this is stupid. And I was like, oh, maybe I could take the head on and off, and I'm like, no, that's annoying. So I went to a local guitar center, bought a bass drum hole cutter, so the thing they use to cut a bass drum hole, like the port in a bass drum so you can mic it, and cut a hole in the top of my snare drum. So like if you ever see my snare drum, that's why the hole's on the top on the batter head. I cut it and put the ball inside. And I was like, oh, so it's like rolling around inside the drum going, and then I noticed that I had this exposed surface now, which was the edge of the cut. And so I would start crackling on it. And I created this whole new vocabulary of playing the snare drum by just cutting a hole in the drum head. And so now my snare drum, a lot of my sets are just literally like this kind of, crackling stuff.
I'm curious, where would we find, I don't know if you mentioned already, is it on one of your albums, or where would we find
Yeah,
that?
it's on my Bandcamp. So if you if you go to my website, justinvanstrasburg.com, and click through to the links, or just go to justinvanstrasburg.bandcamp.com.
Yeah.
There's amplified drum. So the ones with the techniques that I play now are drum, drummy, drumming, and then snaring, __1, snaring __2, open windowing. There's like 6 or 7 of them that have that. And then the amplified ones are on there too. So, yeah, a lot of my snare drum albums, I think somebody can find something interesting in any one of them. The one called I think it's called just Snare Drum. I actually talk on that one. Like I'm kind of explaining things that I'm doing. It's really weird. The one that it's called I make acoustic minimal noise with a snare drum. That one is actually it's called I make acoustic minimal noise ... and then the track title spell out snare drum.
Okay.
So it's like S.
Oh yeah,
N,
I read that one once.
And that one actually features everything. So like there's amplified stuff on there, acoustic stuff on there. There's a live set which is in the very middle, played through a that was captured from a cell phone video when I was in Florida. So yeah, but yeah, I think that answers the question. I hope it does anyway.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to chime in with a question.
All right.
I have a unique way of phrasing this. Shout out to OG Soul last week, but
Shout out.
I wanted to know, I feel like you might have a good answer for this. Just you seem to find all the things that nobody knows about, or it's a niche sort of thing, especially with the snare drum that you were just talking about. I was wondering what video from the internet lives in your head rent free. If you've ever heard that saying from, just
What's just, what comes to the top of your head when you think like, oh, internet videos? What's your favorite maybe?
rent free.
Or rent free?
I don't
It's
know
gotta be
it.
free.
I don't know at the moment. But yeah, I'm not really sure.
Stumped.
Yeah, that's a stumping one for me. I don't know. I'm
Justin has been
always on the quest for something new, which is weird, but I've tried to stop finding new music and I just can't. I literally just can't. I have like top 9 lists every year for like the past 6-7 years, and I just can't. I want to get to that point where, you found your favorite band, you don't need anything else. I don't know. Video wise, I'm not sure.
Okay, I have another question. We can do a callback real quick.
Call back.
I have albums that live rent free in my head, I guess.
Yeah. Well, hear me out now.
All right. Woohoo.
You said earlier you were talking about maybe listing your 5 favorite songs, and that kind of stuck with me, and I was just curious. I wanted to know what those 5 favorite songs were.
All right. Favorite song of all time. I want to see if you guys can guess.
No way.
Can you guess?
Maybe Jordan with his
Freebird.
No.
with his electronic music catalog that I didn't know he had.
All right.
I'm not going to be able to just guess. Yeah.
My favorite song of all time is Summer '69 from Bryan Adams.
Not even.
Very,
That's a
very,
good one.
very unexpected. I
Yeah,
know.
that was unexpected.
Second favorite song. Again, they're all from the '80s. Second favorite song of all time. Boys of Summer from Don Henley.
Okay.
That da 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 da. That's just.
Oh, yeah.
That's killer. That's
We'll
amazing.
We'll make a list as he says it.
Number 3, Pour Some Sugar on Me from Def Leppard.
Good
Wow,
one
they really
also.
are.
I love that. I love
that
Def
one.
Leppard.
I saw that coming. With the
Rick
hair
Allen's
and
my
all.
favorite drummer of all time.
Okay.
Before he, when he didn't have, after he lost his arm and before, favorite drummer of all time. He's the reason I play the drums. 4 and 5 alternate depending on my mood, but today I will say Corey Hart's Never Surrender is number 4 and Take On Me from Aha's number 5. Corey Hart's Never Surrender is my favorite ballad of all time.
Okay.
It's just because I love the drum beat in it. I don't know. After this, listen to the song, you'll be like,
Yeah.
my favorite album of all time.
This is so unexpected.
The favorite album is the favorite album might be unexpected because you might never even heard of it, is Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest by As Cities Burn. It's I guess you could call it a metalcore album, but it's before metalcore was technically a genre, because it's like 2007, I think, is that one? 2008, something like that. I forget the exact year. But I love that album because it's basically an indie rock band playing metalcore.
Okay.
So it's a different feel to it. Like if you've
Interested to hear that.
have you ever heard of the band Norma Jean or Chariot?
Mm-hmm.
So Josh Scoggin, the vocalist of the Chariot and the original vocalist of Norma Jean, produced the album. So that should give you a little bit of the vibe that it has, because anything Josh touches has this same, like, intensity, but combustibility. I don't know. There's just something about it. And here's another example. It's a metalcore album that there's no double bass on. So the drummer plays everything with a single bass drum, just a single foot. It's really good. So, yeah.
All right.
Solid.
Those were great answers.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess we're getting close to the end of the interview. I was wondering, do you have anything coming up? Any shows or releases?
So, my band Neon Fantastic has a show Saturday at the Hostel in Buffalo, Niagara. And Buffalo on Saturday? Saturday.
That's November 4th, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that will have already happened.
Get your time machine.
Sorry about that one. Oh, well. Well, the next Neon Fantastic show then, hopefully, will be November 25th at the Tudor Lounge in Buffalo. Still figuring out the lineup for that one. And I think we have a show, again, it's also still coming together, December 15th, and that's going to be at Amy's Place / Area 54. Just go to neonfantastic.com. Stuff is there. I guess this will be, maybe it'll be announced before. I don't know. So I used to do this series. So I promote and book shows, and I used to do this series of shows years ago called Acoustic Noise Shows, where I forced noise musicians to play acoustically. It was hilarious. Took all their electricity away. They couldn't use any electricity. They had to play acoustically. But they got pretty creative.
That's interesting.
My one friend, Andy Zuba, his whole set was dismantling a rocking chair and still continuously trying to make it still rock as he was taking it apart. It was awesome. So I have decided to bring it back, and I'm going to do it December 2nd at Hickory Urban Sanctuary. If you've never been there, it's in Buffalo, 232 Pratt Street. It's our friend Lara Buckley, basically bought this building years ago on the east side of Buffalo, like in an area that just was worn down. And there was like a parking lot next to it, and she has since turned it into a farm. And she's got chickens and bees and all kinds of stuff in this big space inside the building. So I'm doing it there with some friends. Right now it's Deceiver, Steve Flato, Laura's playing. I'm doing a set, Polyester Friends, I think one other. I'm, again, still all coming together, but technically, I guess I'm first thing announcing it here. I don't know whenever this goes out.
Local Lowdown exclusive.
It might already be announced. I have no idea.
This time next week.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I might not have it announced yet. We'll see what happens. But if not, you're hearing it now, too. So,
Yeah.
December 2nd will be $10, whatever. Yeah, follow my Instagrams, Justin Go Boom. I'll promote it there.
This
Yeah.
is where we get the underground info. And speaking of underground info, for you local lowdown listeners, radio or YouTube, it's already out, so it's not.
Yeah,
underground,
it's
but
been
I
out.
thought it'd be funny. Jordan, who's on the lineup for our 11-11, which is cute of us.
It is cute. Last time we did 9-9, so we got
Angel
something going on.
numbers.
Yeah.
At Main Street, our beach fest. Who are we having at our beach fest?
Oh man, it's gonna be a great night. We got the Burkharts, Johnny and the Man Kids, Beach Tower, Star Juice, Fruit Fly from Cleveland on tour with Star Juice. Gonna be really fun. Doors at 7, music at 7:30.
Yep.
And there's gonna be some vendors there as well.
Bring
some
your money.
on-campus homies. We're
Your
excited
dad.
about it.
Your dad
It's
might be
$8 for 5 bands. Pretty good deal.
there. Aaron's gonna do a backflip.
Aaron's gonna do a backflip
Aaron's
off the
gonna-
top rope.
Only if we get 200
likes on this video.
if this video,
Nah, say something like 5,000 likes. You gotta
if
do
we
it.
get 1,000,000 likes, and
Aaron will RKO me on live set onto a drum set off the balcony.
we will do a giveaway of this entire podcast studio.
Fair.
You can have Jordan's phone.
Yeah, you can have my phone too, honestly.
Well, anyway,
Well, there's some other things going on that day too. We're encouraging everyone to wear beach costumes, or dress in your favorite beach attire.
There's a raffle.
yeah, as an incentive to show up and don't be lame, come for the theme, the beach theme. You get a free raffle ticket to a local lowdown beach basket of merch and
Band
other
merch,
goodies.
Yes. Band merch from the
So-
bands that are playing. It's a good basket. You definitely want it.
All right.
All right. Well, I think that concludes another episode of the Local Lowdown. Thank you so much, Justin, for coming on the show. It's
No
been
problem.
a blast.
Yeah, we appreciate it so much.
Justin Go Boom on the Instagram. I drink a lot of tea, so if you're tea people, yeah.
And thank you for tuning in to the Local Lowdown on 88.9 WCVF The Voice and 89.5 WDVL The Inferno. We'll be back with some more surf-tastic, beachy local music next week. Same time.
Same place.
Bye.
Bye.